It started out as just Travis wanted to talk a little bit about George Washington on his birthday coming up, and it turned into me and Travis doing everything in American history. So, which is fine. We just, I know Brother Billy was talking about us doing a lot of the history in our country. We were having a lot of trouble this afternoon narrowing it down, and we know we can't hit all of it. So what we kind of stuck with was President's Day coming up, and primarily George Washington. I'm going to try to talk about President's Day and the role of the president, and then Travis will talk a little more about George Washington. Let me say this real quick. Maybe I won't take anything he was going to say, but does anybody know why President's Day is right now? Why it's the third weekend of February? It's because George Washington's birthday is February the 22nd. And for many years before it was a President's Day, it was universally George Washington's birthday. It was a day to celebrate George Washington, the man, and all that he did. You know, up until 150 years after our founding, I mean, he was just a unanimous hero. And in recent years, our history and everything, there's an effort to erase not only him and the godly fathers and founders, but heroes in general. I never realized that. I had a little book that I read a little while back, and it really opened my eyes to, you know, all this perversion, this liberal perversion that's going on in our nation. They don't celebrate heroes, because if you have heroes, you have people to look up to, particularly father figures. You know, I mean, that's God's order, and look how backwards the evil liberalism has it. You know, we don't celebrate a masculine hero or a leader, so that knocks all our founding fathers out. That knocks out all of our heroes from time of the founding up till now, and even the heroes before the founding. And actually, I disagree with President's Day a little bit, because what they've done is, are all presidents the same?
No.
See, we used to celebrate just George Washington, and what they've done is, and it's a slap to him, well, we just call it President's Day and lump everybody together, and now it's not George Washington's day anymore like it used to be. Now we celebrate Barack Obama on the same day we celebrate George Washington, and there's a big difference there. It's kind of that mentality of everybody gets a trophy, kind of. And so I really just, this year, and in future President's Day, not every president should be celebrated, because not every president has upheld their oath to defend the Constitution and to live by the Constitution. So I just ask you to celebrate George Washington on this day. And there's plenty of others to celebrate. There really have been some good ones. But let's keep it George Washington's Day and celebrate his birthday. This is what I have learned a little bit about the presidency. If we're going to appreciate our Constitution and defend it, I believe we need to know a lot more about it. And, you know, I try not to just read a whole lot of books, but you have to be selective on your history, but I've been blessed to find several good books of real good, authentic history. And you know, you can start with David Barton, and he'll suggest others, and you learn how to see trash history, and then you learn how to see good stuff that's backed up with original documents and all that. And there's a book on the presidents that's a lot like that, and I read it a couple of years ago, and one of the number one things that pointed out, it took every president of the 19th century and it gave them a grade based on how well they stuck to the Constitution and their Supreme Court picks. And it gave A's and A minuses and F and all that. And but the number one thing probably that I took away from that is the role of a president. What's the word president come from? It's another word that you could derive from it.
Preside, to rule over.
Preside, yeah. And rule over, yes, but let's think more of like the way that a chairman sits over a committee, like a chairman of the board, or a president of FFA or something like that. George Washington before he was president of the country, he was president of the Constitutional Convention just a few years before. And did he write that Constitution all by himself and have all the ideas and make everybody sign it and all that? No, he sat back he presided over the meeting. It's not an iron fist or a thumb on everybody kind of position. He sat back. He was the clear leader in the room, but he didn't do all the talking and he didn't make all the decisions. Most of the debating went on with everybody else in there, and you know, it's not like, oh, we disagree with this, but George wants it, so we'll put it in there. He presided over it, and that's what the American presidency is. It's a position that you preside over. He's over the executive branch. Who ever heard that all three of our government branches are all equal? Who's ever heard that? That's not true. Article 1 in the Constitution has a long list of everything that Congress is supposed to do. That's our legislative branch. And then the executive branch is Article 2. It's a little smaller. That's what the president is over. And then the smallest, the least influential branch is the judicial branch. That's Article 3. And we've got it so backwards. We've got the judicial trumping everything that the Congress in Article 1 and the president and the executive branch in Article 2 is supposed to do. That's how backwards it is. And a lot of that goes on because we don't understand as people, as citizens, the order in which our Constitution lays out for the powers of government. So the president is not over the most powerful branch. The most powerful branch. He's over the second most powerful branch, and even then, he presides over it. And we've really turned that position. We associate so much power with that position. I know I like Donald Trump. In the beginning, I didn't, but I do believe that God is working there, and I'm thankful for him. It makes me cringe to hear people say, Trump's going to do this, Trump's going to do that. It just shows how ignorant we are of our own system of government when we think that one man is going to get all this done. Trump's going to fix this huge issue, or Trump's going to fix that. And, you know, what about 500 members of Congress? You think he's just going to override them? If you have one position that can do that much stuff, and the stuff people say, it's radical change. Trump's going to get in there and fix healthcare and all this kind of stuff. We're in a mess if we have a government. We're no better than the kings of Europe if we have a government where one person can get in and make a radical change. And we just really need to understand the role of a president. And back in the 1800s, there was a Speaker of the House. They're head of the House. And some people were putting him up to run for president, and he said, wow, I have way more influence and power right here as Speaker of the House. That was back when people understood, you know. And so anyways, our president presides, and I'm going to muddle through these notes here. I want y'all to remember that. Congress is the main body. They're the ones that, they are our representatives more than a president is. And if you really want to get stuff done, if you really want to overturn abortion or change stuff with taxes, you don't need to focus on the presidential election. You need to focus on our representatives, because who do you have more influence over? The president, who you share with 320 million Americans, or your representative, who you share with about 100,000 Americans? Your representative. And that's why so much more power was given to Congress in the Constitution. That's the driving force. You know, I mean, in fact, the State of the Union I was reading earlier, George Washington started that process, and it was not a big old get up there and I'm going to tell you what we're going to do and all this kind of stuff like a king. Really, he made suggestions to Congress, and it was up to Congress whether or not they responded and did, because the power of the people, the power of the government, lie in the body that was more connected to the people, that the people could pull the strings a little quicker than just the president. You know, so we really do have it backwards. The judges and the presidency are not supposed to have the influence. Congress is just kind of a byword sometimes. I never hear anybody talk about really Congress making a big change. All we ever talk about is getting the right president in there and hoping that president picks the right justices, and that, you know, and that's going to be the do or die for our country, and it's not supposed to be that way. Because if Trump overrode everything, he totally violated his position as president in the Constitution, and did away with abortion and got all the illegals out of here and did away with gay marriage and all that kind of stuff. We would like that, but we really have a bigger problem after all that was said and done, because we would have a tyrant at the end of that. And all it would take is the next presidential election for one person to get in there with just as much power to turn it all right back around. So I know I appreciate Trump being a bulldog in a lot of ways, but we want to make sure that if we're going to turn this nation back, we need to do it according to our Constitution. That's really what has made, what's protected so many of our freedoms over the years, is a government that's not out of control. You don't want to go back and forth with liberals on, let's see who can get our tyrant in there, So I just figured for President's Day, it would be a good lesson to keep in mind of what a president is. And let's keep it in perspective, and don't fool yourself. Think that you're going to let somebody to do X, Y, Z, do all this kind of stuff. And I want that to encourage you to pay attention more to your representative. That's a blessing. You have you're a lot closer drive to your representative if you had to go meet them. You can control who you get in your congressional district much more than a president. So you utilize that a lot more. Your senators and your representative, that is Congress, and they're the ones who respond to you more directly than that. And our ignorance has a lot to do with that. But something else, there's a pattern, and we'll look at something here in the Bible real quick. Why do we don't understand how we're supposed to fix problems. We don't know what channel to go through, but we also don't know, a part of us don't want to, like we're supposed to. Part of the reason that we look to a figurehead, Trump's going to do this and this and this and this, whose responsibility is it ultimately that abortion not be legal? The people of gay marriage. But what we want to do is go vote once every 4 years and send that person off to do it, and us just have our head in the sand for 4 more years. We're off doing whatever we want to do and not paying attention to our government. That's the only reason our government's gotten the way it has, is because we've done that. We go check a box once every 4 years and we go away. Brother Jason, have you ever hired somebody and put them on a job and checked on them in 4 years? You better check them every day, maybe twice a day. And that's what we've done. The government, if we're going to boast that we're a government of the people, by the people, for the people, well, when you got a rotten government, it's probably because of you in a lot of ways. So what I was getting at is it's kind of our laziness, it's our ignorance, but it's our laziness and it's our own apathy and our service to God that causes us to want a government, our government officials to go fix all the problems. Because it takes work to follow up, to get the right person in there and follow up with them and keep their feet to the fire. I remember that was one of my main prayers whenever Trump got elected. I was extremely thankful, but I knew that if we made the mistake that we typically do, and that is get the right person in there and walk away, we're just going to get disappointed, because we've got to support him when he starts catching fire, and we've got to hold him accountable if he looks like he's about to do something wrong. And our prayer was, God, don't, we've got step 1, let's not squander it by not following up with step 2. And I just pray that we do that. Anytime that we have Republicans sweep and all this kind of stuff, Robert Warren said something one time. He said, when Christians win, they go home. When Christians lose, they go home. And that's, but I think it's a sign that we get more and more evil as a society and lazy when we want our government officials to do all the work for us. Benjamin Franklin said, only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. The more corrupt they become, the more they have need of masters. And that's what we're asking government to do in so many ways. Fix these problems, fix these problems. Well, government has to grow to fix all these problems. We're asking for masters because we're lazier, and we're less spiritual, and we want masters to fix the problem. Thomas Jefferson said, a government big enough to give you anything you want is big enough to take anything that you got. Let's look where we've seen this before. Turn to 1 Samuel easy fix would be to get somebody in there to do everything we want. But that sword cuts both ways. 1 Samuel chapter 8, we'll read verse 5, 6, and 7. Like Brother Billy just said, the Constitution is a very special document. It's one like, I put it second behind the Bible. I believe it's just as pure as the Bible in many ways. It's not the Bible, but I don't believe it has a flaw, and I believe our heritage can tell you that. We've got something extremely special, and the less that we understand our Constitution, we're doing like they did here in Israel. We look at the rest of the world, and we think we don't appreciate our exceptionalism anymore. We think it's old and stupid, and that's what made us the best. We've got a real gem there, but we want socialist measures. We want things that other countries do that's lesser than. We don't realize how much better we've had it. And this is exactly what Israel did right here. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 5. Verse 4. Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Samuel under Ramah, and said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the other nations. What did they have before this? What's the book just before Samuel? Judges. This is before they had kings in Israel. So here they are asking for kings. They've got something special that the other places don't, or something better that the other countries don't. But they're wanting to step down because they don't realize how much better they got it. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Samuel, Hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee. For they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. That's a godly constitution. When we reject our constitution, we're rejecting what God has given us to reign over. And we're asking for the governments of the world that are far less, Verse 9. Now therefore, hearken unto their voice. Howbeit, this is the Lord talking back to Samuel, yet protest solemnly unto them, and show them the manner of the king that shall reign over them. He said, hearken unto them, but tell them, one last time, tell them all the horrible things that come with a king. Tell them why they don't want a king. And 9 all the way through 17 just mentions several things of what a king is going to do to you, how it's going to change your life. Your daughters will be taken away, and they'll be confectionaries and cooks in the king's kitchen, and they'll take your sons to themselves to ride on chariot, basically go die for the king and any of his selfish conquest. They'll take your fields, take your vineyards. And that's what those next 8 or 9 verses are all about. And then verse 18, Samuel says, And ye shall cry out in that day, because your king, which ye shall have chosen you, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. They didn't realize what they had. They asked for something, and some people believe that, if it happened, so the Lord must have not been okay with it, or it happened, so the Lord must have been okay with it. If anybody ever says that, I got family members who kind of believe like that. God gives us sometimes, even when it's not the best for us. I mean, God allows things that aren't the best, and just because it happened, don't mean, God never called for a king in Israel. And since they established a king, they never got rid of kings, ever. They had kings for the next however many 1,000+ years. And just like I was saying with tyrants, they had good kings, but man, they could have a bad one and undo everything that the good one did. You don't want a position like a hot seat like that, where all it takes is one evil person to get in and just ruin everything. A king is too much of a centralized government. Before I go to this next point, let me just finish up with this. I see the same attitude in Israel here as what I see in our nation. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, Nay, but we will have a king over us. that we may also be like all the nations, and that our King may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. You see that? You see them passing off their responsibilities? That's what we're doing when we ask government. Government does not belong in housing. It does not belong in health care. It don't belong in feeding people. And we just, so many programs is because we're asking government to handle these problems. They always do a lackluster job when compared to what a private individual can do, and it takes more money for them to have all these programs, and they never go away, so our taxes skyrocket. Let's go back to what Benjamin Franklin said about only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. You need government. There was a Speaker of the House in 1850. His name was Robert Wentworth. And he had a long quote one time. And the one thing I remember from it, he said, is that man will either be governed by the Bible or the bayonet. What does that mean? You can either read the Bible, govern yourself, have self-control, be virtuous, or you can live like a heathen and a tyrant come in and govern you with the bayonet. And the less that we govern ourselves with the Bible, the less virtuous the people are, the less capable they are of freedom that gives rise to masters. Thomas Jefferson talked about a pendulum. All throughout the ages, government is a pendulum. You've got totalitarianism, which is full government, and you got anarchy, which is zero government. Both are ungodly, both are very undesirable. That pendulum, here's the U.S. Constitution. It's right there in the middle. It's the perfect balance of order and personal freedom. Anarchy, God is not an author of confusion. He's a God of order. So anarchy is not biblical. But totalitarianism is not. The Constitution, Thomas Jefferson, they were able to meet right here in the middle with order and personal freedom. And that's what we've had. And if you look through history, all throughout history, governments either do that, or you'll have anarchy. Somebody like Adolf Hitler comes in and he just swings them back over here with strict order, and I see that happening in our country, that we're going to swing, we fall out of that middle, and it's extremely fragile. That's where our Constitution is. It takes, we can't take it lightly because it can swing one way too quick, But this, I'll just finish up with this right here. What I was going to say, why a monarchy? You ever wonder why we don't like kings at all when we're talking about human kings, but we serve a king? This is the number one reason why that is. 1 Peter 1:23. There's a difference in Jesus being a king and a man being a king. This is why Jesus is the only king that should ever be a king. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 23. But being born again, not of corruptible seed, but of incorruptible, by the word of God, which liveth and abideth forever. All men are corruptible seed. Men are corruptible. Jesus Christ is not corruptible. So, unlimited authority will never sway him. He'll never become drunk with power. He'll never abuse his authority and squash you the way that a man will. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Always remember that. So the more limited our government can be, the best government for men will always be a restricted, a decentralized, limited government, because everybody in those positions can get corrupted with power. And that's what's happened in our government. They've become corrupted with power because we've let them go way too far. Real quick, I'll close with this. Here's something and this backs up what I just said. This was something I believe the state of Massachusetts, a little bit of an ordinance that they wrote. They were going to send it off to the Convention for the Declaration of Independence, and this is just this little snippet of what they kind of finished with. For we can never be willingly subject to any other king than he who, being possessed of infinite wisdom, goodness, and rectitude, is alone fit to possess unlimited power. Only Jesus is fit to possess unlimited power. Men can't. So let's, I guess I want to end on that is remember the role of a president and be careful about wanting government to fix all of our problems, giving power to government. Limited government is biblical government, and I guess I'll turn that over to Travis.
If I or Brother Brooks are able to present anything tonight that's understandable or of use or of value, it's he and I know more than anyone that it's only by God's grace and His mercy that we're able to do that. Because this afternoon he came over to the house and we studied and prayed and just were not feeling prepared or ready to do this. But we both have felt very burdened on this subject, so we appreciate the prayers. I just want to give God the glory for anything of value that comes out of this. I want to start with several of you in Brother Billy's Bible study class know that we've been talking about remembering. We've been reflecting on things, on marvelous works that God has done in our lives, and remembering those things and sharing them with others. And it's really burdened me to remember things, the marvelous works He's done in my life and in this nation. And there's many times in Scripture where God tells His children to remember and to not forget. I want to open with Jude verse 5. Well, I'll start in verse 1. Jude, the servant of Jesus Christ and brother of James, to them that are sanctified by God the Father, and preserved in Jesus Christ, and called. Mercy unto you, and peace, and love be multiplied. Beloved, when I gave all diligence to write unto you the common salvation, it was needful for me to write unto you and exhort you that you should earnestly contend for the faith which was once delivered unto the saints. And really listen here to 4 and 5. Verse 4, for there are certain men crept in unawares, who were before old ordained to this condemnation, ungodly men, turning the grace of our God into lasciviousness, and denying the only Lord God and our Lord Jesus Christ. I will therefore put you in remembrance, though ye once knew this, how that the Lord, having saved the people out of the land of Egypt, afterward destroyed them that believed not. Think about verse 5. The Lord saved the people out of the land of Egypt, and afterward destroyed them that believed not. Our nation was, we as people were saved and delivered from tyrannical rule. And we need to not forget that. And right here in verse 5, they were destroyed because they believed not. They didn't remember how they were delivered. They didn't remember that they were saved. As Brother Brooks already mentioned, there's an effort really by Satan to remove our greatest heroes from our memory. And they do this by replacing truth with lies. There's countless false accounts of our founders, lies about them that we accept and believe because we're ignorant, because we choose not to research, and we choose not to believe what our founders say. And I said, it's our duty as followers of Christ, as we've been studying, it's our duty to remember our deliverance, to remember our heroes, to remember the men that were raised up by God and performed marvelous works of deliverance. Tonight, it being George Washington's birthday, Thursday, I believe, 22nd, I want you to remember a man who like Moses, was used by God to deliver a nation out of bondage. Who, like David, was a mighty, valiant man of war. And like Solomon, was wise and prudent and judgment.
Amen.
He possessed qualities of some of the finest men we read about in the scriptures. In studying about him, I was impressed how unique George Washington was. I was impressed at how he stood apart from any other at that time. Physically, he was far from average. He stood over 6 inches. He was 6'2" from all accounts. He was 6'2", and I read somewhere that the average height of a man during that time was 5'7", 5'8", I believe. So he was 6 inches taller than the average man. He performed athletic feats. There were several accounts of him performing athletic feats that were unmatched by any man. His physical appearance was so unique that he was then and is easily recognized today. You see a picture of George Washington, and there's no one that looks like him. There were many portrait painters and sculptors who made remarks about his appearance, that he was like none other than. It's said that no sculpture or painting has really succeeded in capturing his expression and the full likeness of his frame. That he was chosen by God and set apart as being uniquely fit to serve as the general of the American Army and to lead our nation as president during his formative years. I just want to read several quotes from people who knew him. There was in his whole appearance an unusual dignity and gracefulness which at once secured him in profound respect and cordial esteem. He seemed born to command his fellow men. Another said that the personal appearance of our commander-in-chief is that of the perfect gentleman and accomplished warrior. He is remarkably tall, full 6 feet, erect and well proportioned. The strength and proportion of his joints and muscles appear to be commensurate with the preeminent powers of his mind. Isaac Weld in 1797 said, Mr. Stewart, the eminent portrait painter, told me there were features in his face totally different from what he ever observed in that of any other human being. There's countless others that I've read, just accounts of how unique he was and how he was like no other man. His adopted son, George Washington Parke Custis, said, to a majestic height was added corresponding breadth and firmness, and his whole person was so cast in nature's finest mold as to resemble the classic remains of ancient statuary, where all the parts contribute to the purity and perfection of the whole. As I've studied and read so many accounts of him, it just has struck me how, if we take the time to study and to learn about him and remember him, how we can't deny God's work in his life and his choosing, his setting apart of our greatest general and president. There's an interesting account. In 1770, which was after the French Indian War, in 1770, an old Indian chief who had fought against Washington in a particular battle that Washington was very much exposed, and he, by all accounts, should have been killed on several occasions. He was spared. This old Indian chief recalled Washington's invincibility in that battle, and I'll just read his account, and he's quoted in effect as saying, I'm a chief and the ruler over many tribes. My influence extends to the waters of the Great Lakes and to the far blue mountains. I have traveled a long and weary path that I might see the young warrior of the great battle. It was on the day when the white man's blood mixed with the streams of our forest that I first beheld this chief. I called to my young men and said, Mark yon tall and daring warrior, he is not of the Redcoat tribe. He hath an Indian's wisdom, and his warriors fight as we do. Himself is alone exposed. Quick, let your aim be certain, and he dies. Our rifles were leveled, rifles which, but for him, knew not how to miss. 'Twas all in vain. A power mightier far than we shielded him from harm. He cannot die in battle. I am old and soon shall be gathered to the great council fire of my Father in the land of shades. But ere I go, there is something bids me speak in the voice of prophecy. Listen, the Great Spirit protects that man and guides his destinies. He will become the chief of nations, and the people yet unborn will hail him as the founder of a mighty empire. We know that today is the Indian prophecy. I don't need to say any more about it. Obviously, that prophecy was fulfilled, the chief of nations and the founder of a mighty empire. He was our greatest president. He wouldn't take any credit, I don't believe, but I don't think there's been a greater man in this nation that has fought and served with such patriotism and humility as George Washington. I want to close with a few quotes from Washington himself. Speaking to the governors of the states in 1783, he said, "I now make my earnest prayer that God would have you and the states over which you preside in his holy protection, that he would incline the hearts of the citizens to cultivate the spirit of subordination and obedience to government, to entertain a brotherly affection and love for one another, for their fellow citizens of the United States at large, and particularly for their brethren who have served in the field, and finally, that he would most graciously be pleased to dispose us to do justice, to love mercy, and to demean ourselves with that charity, humility, and pacific temper of mind, which were the characteristics of the divine author of our blessed religion. And without an humble imitation of his example in these things, we can never hope to be a happy nation." And he said, "It is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey his will, to be grateful for his benefits, and humbly to implore his protection and favor. That great and glorious being who is the beneficent author of all that was and is to come." Does that sound like words of a man who doesn't believe that God has his hand in our daily affairs? He said, "There never was a people who had more reason to acknowledge a divine interposition in their affairs than those of the United States. I should be pained to believe that they have forgotten that agency which was so often manifested during our Revolution, or that they failed to consider the omnipotence of that God who is alone able to protect them." I just want to close with that quote. I think it's our duty to remember our heroes, remember the godly men that God chose to lead our nation and use to deliver our nation, and remember the words of those men, especially in this week as we celebrate George Washington's birthday. Remember what he said, and he clearly wanted us to remember that our protection comes from the Almighty God.
The Lord bless Brother Brooks and Brother Travis to both bring some very, very important lessons to us tonight. And I pray that God will help us. I've been convicted as they've been talking that I'll never again just call this President's Day. I'm going to go back to calling it Washington's birthday. Two things I want to mention in closing. One is that when you see how great a man George Washington was, it makes you realize God had to be working in his life. And so it's some people might say, well, that's giving too much glory to a man. No, it's giving glory to God for giving us such a great man as George Washington was. George Washington said, "It is impossible to rightly govern the world without God and the Bible. Do not ever let anyone claim to be a true American patriot if they ever attempt to separate religion from politics." So we see how many traitors there are today as they're trying to separate religion and separate God from politics. Thank God for Brother Brooks and for Brother Travis and for the wonderful job that they've done. Pray that God will bless it to be a blessing in your life.